This program contains discussions of real-life crimes and may not be suitable for all audiences. When Darkness Falls is created for educational and awareness purposes, every effort has been made to ensure accuracy, and we tell these stories with deep respect for the victims, their families, and their communities. The goal is not to sensationalize, but to remember, to understand, and to learn. Christmas Eve. For most families, it's a night filled with light and laughter. Children staying up too late, waiting for Santa. Parents stealing moments of quiet joy wrapping presents or preparing a holiday meal. It's a night where no matter how difficult the year has been, you come together just for a few hours, or where the world feels safe. But sometimes Christmas brings more than warmth. Sometimes it becomes the backdrop of tragedy. Today we're going back to such a Christmas where the entire family joy was shattered in the cruelest way possible. It is the story of the Ortega family of Covina, California. A night, their holiday became a nightmare. Covina is a small, quiet city in Los Angeles County, tucked near the San Gabriel Mountains. It's the kind of place where neighbors know each other, host block parties, and where holiday decorations go from almost every house in December. In 2008, Covina had a population of just over 45,000 souls, a low-crime, middle-class community. The kind of town where Christmas Eve meant cozy togetherness, family dinners, and traditions passed down through generations. And at the center of those traditions was Joseph and Elisa Ortega. Joseph was known as Papa Joe, and Elisa, lovingly called Alice, were the heart of the family. Immigrants from Mexico, they built their life in California with hard work, devotion, and an unshakable love for their children and grandchildren. Papa Joe is known for his baseball caps. He seemed to have one for every occasion. Alice adored her two dogs, one of them an Alaskan Husky. She'd coo at them, "Calindo," how cute, in her gentle baby talk voice. Together, Joe and Alice had 5 adult children: James, Charles, Sylvia, Alicia, and Letitia. And each one of them had families of their own. And if you were a friend of one of the Ortegas, you were a friend of them all. Their home was always opened for poker nights, pizza dinners, or big celebrations, but nothing compared to Christmas. On December 24th, the Ortega home was buzzing with holiday energy. Nearly 25 people were packed inside, gathering for the annual Christmas Eve party. The adults played poker in the dining room table, laughter spilling out of the living room, children running around the house chasing each other past the sparkling tree. In the kitchen, Alice and her daughters had prepared food for everyone: tamales, pozole, trays of cookies. The atmosphere was loud, warm, and joyful. The kind of family celebration where you could barely hear yourself over the laughter and the conversations. It was the kind of night that if you could bottle it all up, you'd keep it forever. No one inside the Ortega home knew that across town, a man dressed up as Santa Claus was preparing to destroy them all. To understand what happened that night, we have to step back to look at the man who walked into the home dressed as Santa, and the man they named Bruce Jeffrey Pardo. On the surface, he wasn't the kind of man you'd expect to end up in the center of a tragedy. He was 45-year-old, lived in San Fernando Valley, He worked as an electrician engineer. He had good education, graduating from California State University, Northridge. At one point, he'd even worked as a prestigious jet propulsion laboratory. To many that knew him casually, Bruce seemed normal, polite, maybe a little quirky, but behind closed doors, things were different. In 2004, Bruce met Sylvia Ortega. She was warm, family-orientated, and a mother of 3 from a previous relationships. Sylvia came from an Ortega clan, the same family who would later host the Christmas Eve gathering. At first, Bruce and Sylvia's relationship seemed promising. They married in January 2006. For a short while, friends saw them smiling together, blending their lives. But it didn't take long for cracks to start forming. Bruce had a strong, rigid ideas about money. He refused to open a joint bank account with Sylvia. He expected her to take care of her own children and her own resources, even though he was earning way far more than she was. But there was something else. Sylvia would undercover that made the cracks in their marriage split right open. Bruce had been hiding a child from a previous relationship, a little boy named Matthew. Matthew had been born healthy, but when he was 13 months old, tragedy struck. He fell into a swimming pool and suffered a severe brain injury. The accident left him permanently disabled, requiring round-the-clock care. His mother took on the burden of raising him, while Bruce pulled away. He provided no support, not financial, not emotional. It was just as if he erased that part of his life. When Sylvia discovered the truth, she was stunned. To her, it felt like betrayal, not just that he kept the child from her, but that he had turned his back on him. For Bruce, it became more of a secret he resented having dragged into the light. By the end of the first year of their marriage, things had already begun to unravel. In March 2008, Sylvia filed for a divorce. She cited irreconcilable differences, and the case moved quickly into a bitter, drawn-out battle. By June, the court ordered Bruce to pay $1,785 per month in spousal support. He hated it. To a friend, he complained that Sylvia was taking him to the cleaners. Not long after that, he lost his job at ITT Corporation for billing false hours. Suddenly, he had no income, mounting debt, and the court order demanding thousands he didn't want to pay. That summer, the court suspended his support payments due to his financial hardship, but the bitterness didn't go away. In December 2008, just a week before Christmas, the divorce was finalized. As part of the settlement, Bruce had to pay Sylvia $10,000. She kept her wedding ring. She kept the family dog. Bruce complained that she was living it up, pointing to her new car, trips to Las Vegas, dinners out, massages, golf lessons. To him, and humiliation mixed with anger can be a very dangerous combination. Now, here comes the chilling part. While all of this was happening, Bruce didn't appear outwardly violent. He had no criminal record, no known history of abuse. His divorce attorney said he was civil through the entire process. He even ordered a special Santa suit that fall, telling the seamstress he needed extra large so he could be extra jolly. In July, he started buying guns and ammunition. He ordered supplies to build a homemade flamethrower. He rented multiple vehicles and staged them at different locations. And he ordered a custom-made Santa suit. And the people around him, it looked like life was going. But in the inside, in his mind, Bruce was consumed with resentment, convinced that Sylvia and her family had taken everything from him. By December, he wasn't just bitter, he was obsessed. And he was ready to act. And so, on Christmas Eve, while the Ortega family laughed and played games in their home, Bruce put on a Santa suit, loaded his car, and drove toward Covina. The Ortega family home on Noel Chris Drive is glowing with warmth. On Christmas Eve in 2008, Christmas lights twinkled outside. Inside, the sounds of laughter, children running, poker chips clinking together, filled the air. Around 11:30 p.m., the celebration is in full swing. Some relatives are still eating, others are playing games. Kids are darting in and out of rooms, enjoying the magic of Christmas Eve. It feels like nothing could touch them. And then the knock on the door came. Leticia, one of the Ortega daughters, opened the door. Standing there in Santa Claus, at least it looked like. Big, jolly red suit, white beard, hat, a sack clung over one shoulder. The children squealed with excitement. For them, it was a perfect end to a night. But this isn't Santa. It was Bruce. And inside the festive red suit, hidden beneath the fabric and padding, cache of weapons. Almost immediately, the illusion shattered. Bruce stepped inside, pulled out the handgun. In seconds, the laughter turned to screams. Family members tried to shield their children, chaos erupting as people dived for cover. One girl, just 8 years old, ran up to him, thinking this was really Santa. Bruce raises a gun and fires, hitting her in the face. Bruce began firing. Some family members were hit instantly. Others scrambled to hide under furniture or behind walls. A few managed to escape through windows and sliding doors, running through barefoot into the cold night. Neighbors later described hearing popping sounds like fireworks, but the screams that followed them, something was terribly wrong. As if gunfire wasn't enough, Bruce takes it further. He sets down his sack, pulls out the homemade device he built himself, the flamethrower. With it, he unleashes fire into the Ortega home. Within minutes, the house was engulfed. Family members who had been wounded now face another horror, fire. Just after midnight, 911 dispatchers in Covina began receiving frantic calls. A woman screaming that someone dressed as Santa come to the home and started shooting. Another voice pleaded for help as fire alarms blared in the background.
Covina 911.
Yes, I'm on Northwest Avenue. I'm a homicidal guy, and he shot my little cousin right now.
Okay, can you tell if there's anybody injured? Because we have fire department and officers en route.
Hello?
Hi.
Please come immediately.
Who's in your house?
Immediately.
Ma'am, is the guy in your house right now?
We're having 2 houses down on the cookie side.
Okay. Ma'am, hold on. Is he at your house?
Yes, he's downstairs shooting.
What do you think his name is, Bruce?
His name is Bruce Pardo.
Okay, and who is he to you guys?
Excuse me?
Who is he to you?
He's my ex-brother-in-law. They're going through a divorce right now.
Okay.
With my sister.
Hold on 1 second, okay?
I don't know who else is alive.
I know, ma'am. Just stay on the phone with me, okay?
My whole family, there's 30 people, 25 people.
I know. It's okay. The officers are there. They're trying to get to you guys, okay?
He came in through the entrance of the door, and there's a Santa Claus suit, and I didn't see from when he shot. I heard the shots, and they were like poppers, and I wasn't sure what it was, so everyone started panicking and running, so we all dove under the dining room. Some of us dove, some of us left. I don't know. My mom's house is on the...
Ma'am, the fire department's there, okay? What's he wearing?
What is he wearing? Please. What is he wearing? Please tell me. My nephew... What is he wearing now? He changed his clothes from Santa Claus clothes.
Okay, let me know what he's wearing.
Black clothes.
All black?
He's on neighbor stores.
Firefighters rushed to the scene, but the house was already an inferno. Cars parked outside are scorched. The Ortega's beloved husky perished inside. By the time the fire contained, the home was nothing but blackened ruins. Amid the chaos, Bruce slipped away. He ditched the Santa mask and hat, leaving behind in the destruction that he had caused. His plan, it seemed, been twofold: kill, then escape. But things hadn't gone according to his plan. The fire, part of Santa's suit, had melted against his body. Severe burns covered his arms. His perfect escape plan had unraveled. Still, he drives away, disappearing into Los Angeles night.
Days after a man dressed as Santa Claus murdered 9 people at his ex-in-law's Christmas party, comes word he may have even planned for more victims.
We found another car associated with the crime that was rented by Mr. Pardo, parked in the city of Glendale. What we've determined is that car was parked within several hundred feet of Mr. Pardo's ex-wife's divorce attorney's home.
At a community meeting, the police chief said Bruce Pardo likely planned his rampage for months.
This was not a random act of violence.
The gathering wasn't just only to inform mourners, but help a town talk about tragedy.
When firefighters finally gained control of the blaze, the scene they uncovered was devastating. The Ortega family home, the center of so many holiday birthdays and gatherings, was gone, reduced to a smoldering skeleton. For hours, smoke curled up into the night sky, lit up the flashing red and blue emergency vehicles. Neighbors stood outside shaking, watching in disbelief. One neighbor said that house always had laughter. Now, all we could hear was silence. A few Ortega family members had made it out alive, but their stories were harrowing. Leticia, the daughter who opened the door to Santa, had managed to escape with her young daughter. They fled barefoot into the cold, sprinting down the street, her daughter crying out, "Why would Santa do this?" The 8-year-old girl, Katrina, survived against all odds. She was rushed into surgery. Doctors worked through Christmas morning to save her. A handful of others managed to crawl out through the windows or break down doors. Some had minor burns. All of them carried the trauma that words could barely touch, though others had been trapped inside. When the fire cooled enough for the investigators to search the ruins, they began the grim task of recovering the bodies. 9 members of the Ortega family, 3 generations, were gone. Sylvia Ortega, Bruce's ex-wife; Jose Ortega, Sylvia's father; Alicia Ortega, Sylvia's mother; Charles Ortega, Sylvia's brother; Cheryl Lynn Ortega, Charles' wife; James Ortega, Sylvia's brother; Teresa Ortega, James's wife; Elisa Ortega, Sylvia's sister; and Michael Ortega, Alicia's son. 3 generations wiped out in one single night. Covina police chief would later call it one of the most horrific crimes in the city's history. As the fire burned, officers quickly realized Bruce Pardo was missing. Witnesses said the shooter had been dressed as Santa, and once they connected the dots, Sylvia's ex-husband, the picture became clear. Police across Los Angeles County put on alert. Pardo was armed, burned, and on the run. Not only had he murdered, but investigators feared he might target more people. They later learned his plan had included hitting multiple homes that night. Officers feared the worst, that Christmas morning would bring even more violence. Just after 1:30 in the morning, only a couple miles away, in Samar, the neighborhood noticed something strange. A Dodge Caliber was parked outside, smoking seeping from the interior. When police arrived, they discovered it had been rented by Bruce Pardo. When investigators approached the Dodge, the trap went off. The car erupted into flames. Inside, they found more supplies Pardo had packed, ammunition, bomb-making materials, and evidence that he had planned something even bigger. The Dodge wasn't just a getaway car. It was a firebomb waiting to erase any final traces. Meanwhile, back on Knollcrest Drive, investigators were piecing together the timeline. Survivors gave statements through tears recounting how Santa pulled out the gun and the flamethrower. The image was surreal. The most beloved holiday featured turned into a figure of terror. Reporters swarmed the streets, their lights and microphones intruding on what had just become a national story. By Christmas morning, word had spread. a man dressed as Santa had murdered a family in California. It was a headline that made people stop in their tracks. Hours into the manhunt, police received a tip. Pardo's brother lived in Samar, not far from where the car was found. About 3:30 in the morning, officers descended on the cul-de-sac. When officers entered Samar's home of Bruce Pardo's brother, they braced themselves. They didn't know if Bruce had left more traps or if others might be in danger. What they found was chilling. Bruce lay dead on the floor, dressed not in full Santa suit, but as civilian clothes. Nearby was a 9mm handgun, the same gun he used on the Ortega home. But that wasn't the only weapon in the room. Scattered around him were additional handguns, 5 in total. He had purchased them legally in the months leading up to the attack, buying them slowly so as far not to raise suspicion. Police also found $17,000 in cash wrapped tightly to his leg with a Santa wrap, almost like armor. It was clear he intended to flee, not die in the house. On the floor, detectives found remnants of Santa suit, burned, melted to his skin. The burns on his arms were so severe, the investigators believed this had led a change to his plans. The fire at the Ortega home had backfired, literally. Instead of clearing the path for escape, it had wounded him so badly he couldn't carry it out. Outside, his Dodge Caliber had been rigged into a deadly trap. The ammunition inside was set up so that if anyone opened the door, it would have triggered an explosion, spraying bullets in every direction. Experts later said that the trap was sophisticated enough to kill whoever touched it. Luckily, the car was discovered and disarmed before it could hurt anyone. This detail alone showed the level of planning Pardo had invested in his rampage. There was evidence suggesting he had planned to travel north, possibly to kill his ex-wife's divorce attorney and his own mother, whom he blamed for taking Sylvia's side. The sheer scope of it was terrifying. What happened in Covina was only the beginning of what he had designed. Tracing back, detectives pieced together his preparations. He had ordered a Santa suit months in advance, custom-made, padded so he can hide the weapons. He practiced building a homemade flamethrower using pressurized tanks and spray nozzles. He rented multiple cars, rotating them, leaving trails that confused anyone trying to follow him. He even researched flights to Canada, as though escape was still an option. It wasn't a snap decision. This was calculated, deliberate, and fueled by months of bitterness. And yet, the question remained why. Bruce had no history of violent crime. He wasn't known to be abusive. He didn't have a reputation of being a hothead. But in 2008, his world collapsed. He lost his marriage, lost his job, he owed money. He fixated on Sylvia and her family as a source of it all. Instead of moving on, he let it resonate and grow. He nurtured it like a poison, and by Christmas Eve, that poison had consumed him. For investigators, Pardo's suicide was both a relief and frustration. A relief because the intimate threat was over. No more families would be targeted that night, but frustration because answers died with him. There would be no trial, no testimony, no chance to confront him of what he had done. Instead, the Ortega family, what remained of them, were left with ashes, grief, and questions. Police would later say that Pardo's level of planning was staggering, and if not for the burns he had suffered, the tragedy could have even been greater. But for the survivors, those details didn't matter. What mattered was the empty chairs that Christmas morning and the generations of laughter that would never fill the house again. Words of the Covina tragedy had spread across the country. What happened on Knollcrest Drive wasn't just a headline. It was their parents, their siblings, their children, their entire sense of home. The surviving Ortega family members faced the kind of grief most of us can't even imagine. Joseph and Alicia, the couple who had built the family traditions, their children, who had gathered there year after year around the same table. One family member later said it felt like we had been erased. In early January 2009, the family gathered again, not for poker or tamales, but for funerals. Thousands of mourners came to the service. Friends, neighbors, even strangers who had read about the case and wanted to show support. The church overflowed with flowers and candles. The eulogies remembered Joseph and Alicia as the anchors of the family, people who opened their doors to everyone. Their children will remember their kindness, their humor, and their generosity. But even in those moments, the pain was sharp. How do you say goodbye to nearly your entire family at once? Katrina, the 8-year-old girl, who had been shot, underwent multiple surgeries. She recovered, but the memory of that night would never fully leave. Letitia and her daughter struggled with nightmares replaying the moment they opened the door. Others spoke of survival guilt, asking themselves, why them? Why not me? And yet, through it all the pain, they kept going. The Ortegas were people of faith. Every Christmas after, they gathered again. Not in the same house, of course. That home was gone. But wherever they were, they lit candles, shared stories, and carried the tradition their parents started. In one interview, a family member said, "He took so much from us, but he didn't take everything. He didn't take our love. He didn't take our faith. He didn't take the way we remember them." For years, the site of Knoll Crest remained a quiet scar, but also a reminder of resilience. During anniversaries, people left flowers and Christmas ornaments on the spot where the Ortega home once stood, a silent promise that the family would never be forgotten. For many survivors of violence, holidays become complicated. What once was joy now carries a shadow of absence. Christmas music, lights, even the smell of tamales in the kitchen, all of it can trigger memories of that we lost. We've talked about the Ortega family. We've talked about Bruce Pardo's actions. But let's pause for a moment to step back, because crimes like this, they don't just happen in a vacuum. They don't just appear out of thin air. They become patterns of anger, resentment, of refusal to let go. And experts say those patterns are worth paying attention to. In the aftermath, criminologists and psychologists studied Bruce Pardo's case closely. They described him as someone who struggled with narcissistic traits, a need to control his image, to refusal to accept personal failure, a tendency to blame others for his problems. But why Christmas? For the most of us, a holiday are a time of joy. But for some people, especially those dealing with resentment and loneliness, they can be a pressure cooker. Psychologists call it holiday stress amplification. Basically, if you're already struggling, the season's emphasis on family, love, togetherness makes those struggles feel even more unbearable. For Bruce, walking into the house on that Christmas Eve wasn't just about revenge. It was about making sure Sylvia and her family would never celebrate joyfully again. It was the cruelest possible timing. Another chilling part, Bruce didn't look dangerous. He had no criminal record. He smiled at friends, neighbors. He ate pastries at his favorite bakery just days before. This is something experts often stress. You can't always see violence coming. Sometimes it hides behind normal routines. Sometimes the person you least expect it, one carrying the most resentment. That's not to scare anyone, but it's a reminder that we can't always judge safety by appearances. When cases like this are studied, psychologists and law enforcement often highlight a few key lessons. Resentment is dangerous when it festers. Warning signs aren't always obvious. And holidays are a high-risk time. The point isn't to live in fear. The point is to recognize the tragedy often hides in plain sight. And when we hear stories like this, we're reminded how important it is to check on the people around us, to notice when bitterness is consuming someone, to reach out or encourage them to get help before it spirals into something irreversible. Because if anything could come from this story, this dark, is awareness. When trials like this make headlines, the focus often sticks to the violence, the weapons, the fire, the Santa Claus suit. But the Ortega family, they deserve to be remembered for the way that they lived. Joseph and Alicia Ortega built a family around laughter, food, tradition. Their children carried the spirit into their own lives, raising kids, inviting friends, making sure no one ever felt left out at a gathering. They weren't perfect, no family is, but they had love. They gave freely. Even in depth, the legacy has endured. As we close this story, let's not leave it defined by the name of Bruce Pardo, but let's leave it defined by Joseph and Alicia, by their children, and by the sounds of laughter around the poker table, by the sight of Christmas tree twinkling in a warm Covina home. That's who they were, and that's who they'll always be. If this episode spoke to you, we truly appreciate you take a moment to subscribe and stay with us for future cases. Your voice matters. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and your insight may help someone else see the case from a new perspective.